My life and love with Baba, I'd like to begin from the beginning. And that was before I was born. When my mother conceived me, I was in Dehradun, and our family was in Dehradun, and Baba was in Dehradun. And my mother was blessed. Then she went to the hospital. And I was born, and Baba was, of course, very eager to know, and Mandali, the women Mandali, was eager to know as to whether it was a boy or a girl, and then Baba was informed that I was born. And then my parents named me as Naosherwan. My family name is Nalawala, Naosherwan Nalawala. But I go under the name of Naosherwan Anzar because that's my pen name. I write under that name. Anzar is the plural of Nazar, and it connotes observation. To observe, and then the intake of observation, and then to write after observing. That is Naosherwan Anzar. And a few months after I was born, I had an incredible experience of Baba's love, of Baba's compassion and guidance. And that was the time when I had a terrible rash on my body. It was not some sort of a disease or skin disease or anything, but it was some sort of a rash which was very, very severe, and I was a few months old, mind you. Everyone was very worried about it. Baba asked my parents to consult the best doctors in the city. The women Mandali would try and give certain suggestions, and Baba put Goher on the job. But nothing seemed to work. The doctors had put their thumbs down, and at that time Baba used to go on his tours to Motichur and Hardwar, in which there was a phase in which he had to contact something like 750 Walis, Yogis, Saints, and he used to touch the feet of the Walis, Yogis, Mahatmas and Saints. And he used to come to Dehradun. At the same time, he used to stay at a distant place, and he would go to Hardwar, Motichur, and then come back and inquire. He would come to our home and inquire how the baby was. Till one day, when all the doctors had given up hope, in Dehradun, Baba lived on Rajpur Road, and he would go to Mafi Majri and Hardwar and Motichur and drop by at our house and inquire about the baby's health and how I was progressing and whether the doctors had given me the proper treatment. But things didn't seem to work out exactly in a normal way. Doctors had given up hope, and everyone had given up hope. So one day my parents fell at Baba's feet and said that the baby must be saved. And Baba called my mother and asked her whether she would do something that he would ask her to do. And since my father and mother had complete implicit faith in Baba, my mother agreed to do whatever Baba said and obey him to the hilt. So Baba asked my mother to take a brush with iron filings and scrub the baby's body. It was too much for my mother, and it would be too torturous for my mother to go through this ordeal. So my mother asked my aunt to go through it. And of course, even the women Mandali who were present there felt that Baba was being very cruel on the baby. And my mother and my aunt scrubbed the baby till the baby bled. And I remember crying. I cried my lungs out, and there were tears in everybody's eyes. And Baba and the women Mandali were waiting in the other room. Everybody waiting to know the results of what would happen, because everybody expected that the baby would die. Baba instructed that all the clothes around the baby would have to be burnt, that the baby would have to be given a hot water bath and put to sleep immediately. And everything, all the instructions were carried out, and I was put to sleep, and everybody waited for the baby to die. But I lived. And that was the first touch of Baba's grace and compassion that I got. And ever since, Baba accepted me more or less like his baby, his child, and continually, as long as he lived, continued to guide me and help me both materially and spiritually, and in all the silent ways that he could. I remember that then Baba soon after left Dehradun and then came back when he began his new life. And then for some time he stayed again in Rajpur Road, and then sometimes he stayed at Mafi Majri, where the men and women Mandali had separate quarters. And then in his new life, Dr. William Donkin, you know, that in the new life, each one of them had to support themselves and look after themselves, and except the women Mandali. And Dr. Donkin was to start a dispensary, and my father had to help him start one. So after a lot of searching of houses and things, Dr. Donkin's dispensary was bang opposite our house on 36 Lytton Road. During the new life of Baba's helplessness and hopelessness, each of the Mandali had to look after themselves, find a job for themselves, and among them, Dr. Donkin was to be helped by my father in establishing a dispensary. And this dispensary was, my father could locate one bang opposite our house. In the beginning, there were not many customers coming in, there were not many patients and clients coming in, and Baba had instructed that all the Baba lovers' family should be going to Dr. Donkin for treatment. And I remember that one of my birthdays was held there, but soon after, everybody realized that Dr. Donkin couldn't continue any longer because the business was in a bad way. A lot of money had been spent. So Baba asked him to close down the dispensary, and he came and lived in that house. And that was the time when we came closest to Baba. He would visit our family regularly. And there was one little occasion when my aunt, who was living with us, she's now in Karachi, had some marital problem in the sense that she wanted to marry a man who was absolutely deaf because a bomb had exploded and he was deaf in the ears. And my aunt, who had deep faith in Sai Baba, but really wanted to know from Baba whether she should marry this man. And one day Baba came over, and of course my aunt had that reassurance that from my father that if Baba said yes to the marriage, she would have to marry him, and if Baba said no, she would not have to marry him. And she asked Baba whether she should marry the man, and Baba said yes to it, and she did marry the man. And at that time I remember I was a small boy continually sitting on Baba's lap all the time. I just wanted to be with Baba, didn't want to be with my mother also. And my sister went across to Baba with her autograph book, and of course Baba never disappoints children. So Baba just took up the pen and just put a line across the autograph book, which my sister still treasures till this day. I just wanted to be with Baba, didn't want to be with my mother also. And my sister went across to Baba with her autograph book, and of course Baba never disappoints children. So Baba just took up the pen and just put a line across the autograph book, which my sister still treasures till this day. That was how we grew up with Baba. And there was a time when my parents were a little careless about the children, and I remember one time my sister came from her singing classes, and she stood outside and found that the door was locked. She stood at the gate and started crying, and Baba called, and some of the Mandali saw her, and Baba called her over and kept her near him. And when my parents came over, he chided them, and that way he prepared them, he guided them on every step of how everything should move. Gradually, after some time, of course, I would like to mention about the time, about Baba's new life, when he made the declaration of the highest of the high. That was on Zarathustra's birthday. And as far as I would say, that was the most significant of Baba's messages to humanity. And at the same time, at Mafi Majri, he also gave the Master's Prayer in Gujarati, which was later on translated into English. And that was the time when, the new life was the time when my father worked as Baba's secretary, in the sense that there was no communication since Baba was in seclusion, and my father was the link between Baba and the rest of the world. All the correspondence would come to my father, and he would convey it to Baba, and Baba would give the replies accordingly, and so forth. That was the way we came closest to Baba. My mother had to cook for the Mandali, my mother had to cook for Baba. And I remember a little anecdote about my mother, that one day Baba said that he wanted just rice and lentil, right at 9 o'clock in the morning. And my mother had got up early in the morning. They were all scurrying about, and they found that the rice had not cooked up well. And 9 o'clock meant 9 o'clock. It was not that Baba was a rigid avatar or he was a rigid man. It was just that he was preparing us to be on time and to be disciplined in our lives. So the rice was sent, half-cooked rice was sent to Baba to be there by 9 o'clock. And my mother was most worried about it, and my aunt, who was helping her on the rice and the lentil soup, was most worried about it. And the utensil in which the rice was placed was tightly packed up because it had to be sent to a long distance. And that evening, everybody was agog, and Baba called my mother and said, "The food today was beautiful. It was lovely. The rice was beautifully cooked." And my mother felt in her heart of hearts that Baba was being sarcastic with her. And then she asked the Mandali, "How was the rice today?" And the Mandali said that the rice was beautiful. And then we all imagined that it had to be sent to a long distance. And that evening, everybody was agog, and Baba called my mother and said, "The food today was beautiful. It was lovely. The rice was beautifully cooked." And my mother felt in her heart of hearts that Baba was being sarcastic with her. And then she asked the Mandali, "How was the rice today?" And the Mandali said that the rice was beautiful. And then we all imagined that the wondrous way in which Baba works, in which the steam in the rice pot had cooked the rice all by itself. It's just these small little wonders that brought us closer and closer to Baba, and closer to loving him. Then I grew up under Baba's love and guidance, and there was a time when my father had a little depression in business, and he wrote to Baba in terms of depression, and he was very sad. And he wrote saying that he was most worried about his business. And Baba wrote back saying that it's really me who has to worry. If you keep on worrying, then why should I worry? I don't have to worry anymore. And Baba told my father that his nazar was on him. And my father obeyed him accordingly. And gradually, we started getting a little money, and our lives started getting a little better. And I continued school, and while I was in school, I started on my In Lap of Love. I started writing poetry. I don't know how the inspiration came, and if you were to ask me to write the same poetry again, I would put my thumbs down, because I don't think I'd be able to write the same poetry again. Because I felt that poetry was absolutely inspired by Baba. Every word that went into it was inspired. And although now I look at my book In Lap of Love as being absolutely juvenile, I would say that it was inspired poetry. At that time I did read a lot of Khalil Gibran as well, and that influenced me too, and that's exactly what I mentioned to Baba, that it was Khalil Gibran who gave me some sort of a fillip to writing, and it was Baba who absolutely inspired me to all the thoughts and the words that came out of me, and which I put down on paper. Gradually, Baba was in seclusion, and then it was just in 62 that Baba called me over for the East-West gathering, and that was the time when I could only come for a day because I had to appear for my senior Cambridge examination. And we were with Baba, and Baba said that, "How are you? Are you prepared well for your exams?" And I said, "Baba, I am prepared for my exam, but I'm extremely weak in mathematics, and I don't know whether I'll really get through my exams because it's just this mathematics and science." So Baba said, "Don't worry, I was also extremely weak in mathematics. And that's the truth. Baba was very weak in arithmetic, particularly. So Baba said, don't worry, you go and sit for your exams and I'll help you. So Baba said, don't worry, I was also extremely weak in mathematics. And that's the truth. Baba was very weak in arithmetic, particularly. So Baba said, don't worry, you go and sit for your exams and I'll help you. And although I didn't really expect to get through, I did well in most of my papers and even including arithmetic, surprisingly. That was the time when I could meet Baba for just a day, and he asked me to look after myself and that I was his child and that I was not to worry and be happy in his love. Soon after I came back, and the very next year, Baba gave me an opportunity, a wonderful opportunity of being a delegate at the Third World Religions Conference. And that was in 1965. Each Baba speaker had been assigned a certain role. And the role was of being a delegate at the Third World Religions Conference. I had to pay some money. And Sant Kripal Singh was the president of this Third World Religions Conference. And the vice president, who was presumably a follower of Sant Kripal Singh, Friary von Blomberg, had declared Baba publicly as being God in human form. And he was the one who encouraged me to take part in the conference, because at that time I was barely 17 or 18, and I was the youngest delegate. And my subject was the supervening powers of faith in the evolution of world peace. And while I talked a lot of crap like, conferences and religious meets and things, I also talked about Zarathustra and about Jesus and how they came. And at that moment, I said, and today I have come to tell you that Meher Baba is God in human form. And the moment I said that, everybody lunged on me. The people organizers lunged on me. They tried to pull me down. And for a moment I thought that I'd really be physically thrown out. And immediately, Sant Kripal Singh, who was there, he waved out saying that, leave the boy alone. And I spoke very fearlessly. And the audience was something like 200,000 people. And I spoke and said that I am speaking to the world that Meher Baba is God in human form, which is the truth. And here these organizers are pulling me down. I leave it now to you to decide and to come to Baba in his love and compassion. And then, of course, I continued still further, and I spoke on the way how to love God, which Baba had said. I concluded my speech with that. And then I concluded, and Sant Kripal Singh called me over and said, I was very happy with what you spoke. I know Meher Baba very well. And he said, I have to do a lot of work through you. And then I concluded, and Sant Kripal Singh called me over and said, I was very happy with what you spoke. I know Meher Baba very well. And he said, I have to do a lot of work through you. So I spoke and said that any work in the purview of Meher Baba, I am willing to do. Of course, there was a lot of confusion in the conference. And as I remember, once Baba said that all such conferences and meetings murder spirituality. And that was the message he had sent to Yogi Shuddhananda Bharati, telling him that such conferences murder spirituality, and he had asked Bharati to come to him. And that's when Bharati came to Baba. Bharati was considered a yogi at that time, and he's still alive and considered a yogi. That very evening, another incredible thing happened. One of my aunts, whose husband was the head of some Zoroastrian organization in New Delhi, asked me to come and speak about my impressions about the conference. Now, I might as well mention that my aunt, whose father had worked in the early 30s and 40s, they had done organized anti-Baba work. And This man's daughter was naturally influenced by all the anti-Baba work which her father had done. And at this meeting in the evening, the head of the Zoroastrian community all over the world, one of the heads, was supposed to preside and talk. Of course, he talked about a host of other things. And then the president of the meeting said that now Naosherwan will speak to you about his impressions of the conference. And of course I said a few things about a conference, how fallacious and how delusory the whole thing was. And I spoke about Meher Baba as being God in human form. And immediately this man got up and said, "May I speak a few words?" And he came to the rostrum and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Meher Baba is the 20th century hoax, and I want you to read Paul Brunton's book called The 20th Century Hoax," and so on. And he strided out of the meeting, which of course pained me a great deal. And before he left out, I stopped him at his steps and said, "If I have offended you, I did not mean to do so. I was only speaking the truth. And it's only a pity that truth was taken so bitterly. I did not expect it." Of course, then he walked out of the room and everybody came and asked me when was Baba breaking his silence and where Baba was and when he would come out of seclusion and so on and so forth. And it was a very exciting session, and it really ended up with a real Baba session. Of course, soon after I went back to Dehradun, I wrote a long report. But Baba wanted me to come over to Pune and talk to him about the whole thing. And I was sitting with Baba, and some of the Mandali was there, and my father was there. And Baba asked me to describe the whole conference and describe what come out of seclusion and so on and so forth. And it was a very exciting session, and it really ended up with a real Baba session. Of course, soon after I went back to Dehradun, I wrote a long report. But Baba wanted me to come over to Pune and talk to him about the whole thing. And I was sitting with Baba, and some of the Mandali was there, and my father was there. And Baba asked me to describe the whole conference and describe what about the meeting with this Dastur of the Zoroastrian community. And of course, Baba went on inflating my ego that, oh, Naosherwan speaks very good English and he's a very handsome boy and so on and so forth. And of course, I knew that while Baba inflated the ego, and Baba often does inflate the ego, and of course he pricks the ego to the extent that the entire ego is absolutely deflated. And that was Baba's secret. His secret of communication, his secret of feeling, and the love he communicated. And I told Baba that, Baba, of course I was trying to really trick him into answering a question. And he said that I narrated the whole event of the conference and how everything went. And I wanted to ask Baba a question. And this question was something that titillated me for a very long time. And I knew that if I asked him directly, Baba at that time did not really want to answer questions because we had come really for feeling and we wanted to enjoy Baba in full. So it was really a trick to get Baba to answer this question. And I asked him, Baba, everything went off all right at the conference, but there was this one little question that eluded me. And naturally Baba said, what was the question? And I said, Baba, the question was, how can Baba say that here he's really God in human form? And Baba said, that you, Naosherwan, you are God in human form. Francis there is God in human form. Erich is God in human form. But what is veiling you is this realization that each one of you are God in human form. If I were to ask you, how can you say that you are a man? You would say that I consciously know and feel that I am God in human form. And there is no doubt about it. And if you were a woman, you'd say, I consciously know and feel that you are a woman. There is no explaining it. Similarly, I consciously know and feel that I am God in human form. And I will help you to release you from this veil of unconsciousness. And that is the time that you will know and feel that you are God in human form. And that is the time that you will get this God consciousness. And then he continued to say, talk about ilmul yaqeen and aqlul yaqeen and the types of conviction, but I don't think I'd go into all that in detail because it is all given and God speaks about the forms of conviction. Yaqeen, really. And then Baba at that instance asked me to play the mouth organ, and of course I played for about 45 minutes, various tunes that Baba liked. And Baba, in those earlier days also, whenever he would refer to me as to about Naosherwan, he would, as if I was playing the tabla, and Baba would refer to me as the tabalchi, that he is Baba. You to say, talk about ilmul yaqeen and aqlul yaqeen and the types of conviction, but I don't think I'd go into all that in detail because it is all given and God speaks about the forms of conviction. Yaqeen, really. And then Baba at that instance asked me to play the mouth organ, and of course I played for about 45 minutes, various tunes that Baba liked. And Baba, in those earlier days also, whenever he would refer to me as to about Naosherwan, he would, as if I was playing the tabla, and Baba would refer to me as the tabalchi, that he is Baba's drum player. And at that time I played the mouth organ, and then I sang a ghazal of Baba, a ghazal to Baba, which I had composed myself and which I had sent to Baba, which he didn't have the time because he had gone through a hectic Sevas program. And while I was singing the ghazal to him, he came across a certain word called Shauq-e-Visal, which means the urge of union. Baba said, do you know what Shauq-e-Visal means? It means union of the lover with the beloved. And the lover lives in this life in order to be one with the beloved. I will help you to see that I will help you to see me as I really am. The body is not what I am. You have to erase. I have come to erase these sanskars that you are so much bound with. And in this pervading duality, I have come to bring the unity. And one day you will know me. Naosherwan, you will know me as I really am. And while he was saying this, suddenly he pointed at me and said, do you accept me in God's human form? And I said, Baba, 100%. And Baba was very happy. And he said, today, Naosherwan, I lay on your shoulders the responsibility of telling the world that I am God in human form. No one believed that I am God in human form. For me, it was a commandment. At that moment, I felt as if I was Moses and that God was speaking to me. That here was a commandment, that he was God in human form, and that I had to go out into this world to tell all that I was God, that Meher Baba was God in human form. I went back to Dehradun, and then I got this, and then the people there, the Baba lovers in Dehradun, asked me to prepare this little sort of a pamphlet called The Spark, in which I had to give an entire resume of Baba's life in Dehradun. And I produced this book, this little pamphlet called The Spark, and everybody liked it, and there was Manohar Sakre, Group Captain Sakre, who wanted me to continue the magazine. He liked the production of The Spark, and Baba liked the